Good morning guys, this is Jochen. Welcome to my channel. First things first, this is part 2 of a series of tutorial videos about the basics of photography. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button down there. This would really help me to go on making these kind of videos. Today we deal with the different camera modes P, A and S to take great photos without using fully automatic mode. Let's go! If you are a beginner and you want to move away from the fully automatic mode of your camera to have more creative influence on your images, you have come to the right place. But if you missed my first video about exposure, I would recommend watching it first, because today I'm referring to a couple of things you should have already heard of. When I talk about shooting modes in your camera today, I don't mean those that already contain a selection of the subject. For example, there are cameras that provide automatic settings for portraits or landscapes. Usually you can find them with the appropriate icon somewhere on a dial or at least inside the menus. These modes are certainly not the worst in modern cameras and you can get decent results. If you are a complete beginner, these are already a small step away from fully automatic. But we want to learn how to get it done ourselves, right? Now we come back to some points we learned about in the first video. Very briefly, if we take a picture with our camera, we have to balance the settings of aperture, shutter speed and ISO so that everything is exposed correctly. Usually we want to avoid overexposed areas, unless you want to use this as a style of your image. But balancing is not everything. For example, we would like a blurry background behind our subject because we want to isolate it. Or we want to achieve motion blur to capture speed or dynamics. Also, the opposite is possible if we would like to have everything in focus or want to freeze a movement completely. And for this, the camera modes P, A and S are a very good and simple way, and not only for beginners. I will deal with the mode M later on this channel, as this is the fully manual mode, so the exact opposite of the full auto, and it is worth a single video. Let's have a look at the others first. Perhaps you have already noticed that I use the Fuji-X system for my photography. Here is my beautiful X-T30. In this system, the mode thing works a little different than with all the others. I will demonstrate you how right away. But first of all, I will show the usual procedure on a small Sony compact camera, where you can choose the shooting modes using this dial. The letters that symbolize the modes are P for program mode, A for aperture priority, S for shutter priority and M for manual mode. P and M form the outer borders, because with P the camera does most, not all, of the work, and with M you do everything by hand. With A and S you can change a specific value and the camera automatically adjusts the rest. With Fuji it's like this. There is no mode dial on a Fuji-X camera, because here the modes are set differently. For the fully automatic, for example, my X-T30 has a small switch up here. With this I give all the settings in the responsibility of the camera. Then we basically have a separate dial for each setting. At the front there is an aperture ring on Fuji-X f lenses. At the top there is always a dial for the shutter speed. And this is something I really love about the Fuji system. But both dials also have a value A for automatic, and depending on which I set to a specific value and which I leave at auto, I am in a different mode, which is shown to me in the display. But let's get into detail now with the P mode. On my Fuji I will turn both the aperture ring and the shutter speed dial to A for auto. If there is a mode dial on your camera, now is the time to set it on P. The P stands for program mode and is the closest to the fully auto. The aperture and the shutter speed will both be set by the camera regarding the available light. But you can change other settings such as ISO, AF point, metering mode, etc., which is not possible in fully automatic mode. In addition, most cameras within P mode will let you do some shifting, so you can turn a dial on the camera to change the shutter speed and aperture settings, for example if you'd prefer a quicker shutter speed or a smaller aperture. But the one value changes with the change of the other, so that the exposure always remains correct. This mode is great if I want to have a certain amount of influence and creativity, but don't have time to set all the values. I can quickly decide what I want to separate my object from the background by using the rear dial to choose a larger aperture or a smaller aperture number. This is used by photographers who want to take more care of the image composition and less of the technical aspects. Martin Parr is a famous photographer who says he only shoots in P mode. But I've also heard a lot about street photographers who do the same thing. So don't be ashamed of using this mode. Anything that leads to a great picture is of course allowed. Mode A is the aperture priority mode, not auto as some of you might have guessed. With this you manually set the lens aperture, while the camera automatically picks the correct shutter speed to expose the image properly. Just remember the first video about exposure, where I already told you that with the aperture you have control over subject isolation, or in other words, the depth of field. If there is too much light, the camera will slow down the shutter speed, but it will automatically decrease in low light. This is the appropriate mode if you want to take, for example, portraits. You are in control to get a blurry background in a close-up or less blur in a surrounding portrait where the context should be recognizable. The camera will choose the shutter speed to achieve a correct exposed result. I will show you with my Fuji by setting the shutter speed to auto and now choose the aperture on the lens. You now see that the camera will pick another shutter speed while I turn the aperture ring. Mode S is the opposite of the aperture priority, the shutter speed priority. Guess what value you can control here? Yeah, right, the shutter speed. Here you set the shutter speed of the camera manually and the camera automatically adjusts the aperture, depending on the light available. In this mode you can control shutter speed and therefore motion blur and frozen motion. On the other hand, you could lose control over the depth of field. So that's it for today. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions on this or any other topic, feel free to write me in the comments. I usually answer within a few hours. Don't forget to give me a like. And please subscribe to my channel, switch on the notifications so that you don't miss any more videos. Take care of yourself, have a good time. Ciao!